I'm joined by Rex Rammel. He's running for governor from Rock Springs. Rex, appreciate you coming down to the studio, making some time for us. How's the campaign trail treating you so far?
You know, I just might become the governor. Things are going really well. A lot of people are supporting me. I think the Wyoming public is engaged. I think they know that things are not good in Wyoming, and things keep going the way they are. I think I might just pull this off.
So if you are elected governor, what's your #1 priority?
Well, for a long time I've had the same goals. I think that Wyoming needs to be sovereign over all of its land. Currently 30 million acres of public land is controlled by the federal government, and I think unconstitutionally so. And now it's becoming a real problem because Joe Biden and his administration are trying to shut down our fossil fuel industry. And without fossil fuels, where is Wyoming? I mean, it's half of our tax base. It's been as high as 70% in the past. Without fossil fuels, Wyoming is a different state. And so I think the solution to the problem, and it's a point in history that has finally arrived, that Wyoming needs to assert its sovereignty over the land, over the natural resources that go with it, and then we get all of the money that it would yield, which is in the billions of dollars. Wyoming has billions and billions of dollars of assets, natural resource assets, above and below the ground. That money would then become ours, and we would have a new state. Actually, we'd be a full state for the first time in Wyoming history.
So why is that something, obviously financially that's a great goal, but why is that something that you're so passionate about?
I'm a constitutionalist. I buried my head in the Constitution years ago. And I asked myself the question, how did the federal government get so much control over our lives? And the conclusion I came to after studying the Constitution and reading all kinds of books and thinking the thing out, I realized that the powers inside the Constitution that give the federal government authority were not in there over the land. They have authority over Washington, D.C., military bases, and other needful buildings. But other than that, they didn't have the power. And so I said, okay, how do we get it back from them? That was the second big question. And I realized after more and more thought and prayer that the 10th Amendment was the answer to this solution, or to answer to this problem. So the 10th Amendment says if there's not a power found inside the United States Constitution, it belongs to the states. So if there's not power over the public lands, then it belongs to the states. And I think a governor, if he had the courage to do it, which I believe I do, could sign an executive order on day one, order the state police in cooperation with the county sheriffs, and walk them out of their offices. I'm talking about all of the federal land managers, the policymakers, the staff, the field workers. They'd be eligible to stay. But the policymakers would be removed by force if necessary. And I'm willing to do it. I've been campaigning on it for 6 months. And the people of Wyoming are right behind me saying, go get them. We're tired of these guys. So that's a preview of what's to come next January if I'm elected on August 16th. I think that there's a couple Democrats in the race, so there would be a general election. But typically, in a race like this, in a Republican state, the winner of the Republican primaries is most likely to advance through the general. Not disrespecting the Democrats that are in the race, but I would most likely be the favored candidate going into November. Then into January, why I would move forward with that executive order, and we'd have a new state.
So you kind of mentioned it earlier about Wyoming and fossil fuels being pretty much interconnected.
Yes.
What would your plans be for Wyoming's economy, to double down on that, or?
Yeah, basically. I'm not against diversifying Wyoming's economy, but the simple truth is, as natural resources go, so goes Wyoming. We don't have a Denver or a Salt Lake City. We don't even have a Billings, and I doubt we ever will. We're just we're wide open spaces, which is what we love about Wyoming. And it's sagebrush and mountains. I mean, that's a fact. It's hard to bring major industries into Wyoming, So I don't think we have any choice. We either double down on what has made Wyoming great and fight off the climate change agenda, or we become something new. We become like some people want Wyoming to become a billionaire's playground. They don't want to see any fossil fuel production. They want half of the state, the 30 million acres. They don't want any production on it. But I mean, how do we feed our families? How do we pay for our government, if we don't have a tax base? So literally, we would have to become a high-tax state, which means an income tax for the first time in Wyoming history, and I'm totally opposed to that.
So what do you view as some of the challenges that Wyoming is facing right now, aside from, taking back those public lands?
Well, the property tax is a real issue across the state. In the more mountainous type areas where people want to live, that come here, that are affluent, they're buying homes, and it's jacking up the property tax prices on everybody. There's several bills in the legislature to curtail that, but I think that the real solution lies in the public land issue that is Wyoming sovereignty. There's so much money that Wyoming could have if we take over that land that I actually believe once you get past, it's going to take some money to manage the land, but in the past, the federal government has taken out over $1 billion just in royalties. If we had that $1 billion, several million would be needed to administer and manage the land, but there would be a lot of money left over. And I would like to see it stay in the counties and reduce or eliminate property tax on private residences. I think that would just be the most amazing thing that we could do for our people, is to say, you no longer risk losing your home if you don't pay your taxes. Because now Wyoming has control over the resources, and those resource taxes will fund local government. I think it's a beautiful plan. It's bold, it's aggressive, it's historic, never been done before, but just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it can't.
You kind of touched on it there, talking about housing and how that's a challenge that people across the state are facing. People are facing inflation right now as well. Do you have any plans in place to try and, help curtail those issues for people across the state of Wyoming?
Well, I believe that our inflation is tied to our energy policy in the United States. I blame Joe Biden and the climate change people for this. They have done everything they could to move us away from fossil fuels, and consequently the price of energy has gone up. Everybody feels it at the gas pump. But the truckers are having to pay high prices for diesel, and that's how our supplies are distributed in the United States. So when the energy policy is wrong, which it is, it drives all the other costs up. So with Wyoming getting control over the land and its energy, we are an energy state. That will mitigate a lot of the damage. And the other thing that people should know is that if Wyoming makes this stand to remove the federal land managers, there's 13 other states in the West that are in a similar position, from Alaska clear to Arizona. And I think that those states they're suffering the same consequences of the energy policy that Wyoming is. Some more, some less. I think they would join Wyoming. And so this becomes a states' rights movement, something that would sweep through the West. It could go into the South. They don't have a lot of public lands down there, but they still, Louisiana and Texas and all those Gulf Coast states, they do offshore drilling. Energy's a big issue down there too. And so we get our energy policy right, starting right here in Wyoming. It spreads throughout the United States, and all of a sudden we have a new America, an America we haven't had since it was founded, when states had some sovereignty, some control over who they were. This would finally arrive in the United States. It would be historic. It's like a second revolution. I want people to know this, that I do not think that removing the federal land managers from Wyoming would ever come to arms. I just don't see that happening. I'm sure that they would not like us removing them forcefully. But they play in the court system. That's what we do. We fight things out in the courts. Our words are the Constitution is the state's weapon. The federal government's weapon is money. They hang that over our heads. Recently, they said if you don't instill gender identity politics in your schools, we're not giving you school lunch money, which is $40 million. If Wyoming had control over our natural resources, we could say, well, we just got $1 billion, you can keep your $40 million. You're not going to input liberal ideas into our school system, woke policies that are dividing America. This would not happen under my plan. And so I really believe, I believe that I have a viable plan. Like I said, it's bold, but I don't think we have a choice anymore. What are we going to do? Just roll over and let them take over? That's not going to happen with Rex Rammel.
Well, my last question, it's a pretty easy one. Just give me the elevator pitch. Why should somebody out there from Wyoming vote for Rex Rammel?
Well, there's 3 people that could be the next governor, in my opinion. I don't think the Democrats have fielded any candidates that are strong enough to overcome the Republican candidate. And it's a kind of a Republican year for sure, after all of the bad positions that the Biden administration has taken. So I think Mark Gordon's either going to get reelected, myself, or there's a retired Marine that one of the 3 of us will get reelected. Mark Gordon, he's a climate change guy. In fact, his statement right after Biden was elected at the press conference in Casper was, quote, "Climate change is the single most important issue on Earth." And I said to myself, if he really believes that, I don't believe he can be reelected, because that is an anti-fossil fuel message, carbon capture, and then the Green New Deal, wind, solar, every alternative except fossil fuels. I don't believe Mark can win on that message. And so from the beginning, I have been talking about that I don't believe in climate change, other than what naturally occurs and has occurred for decades and eons. I don't believe carbon dioxide is a poisonous gas that's going to destroy the world. I can't believe that God would put such a valuable resource for us to use only to destroy us with it. And obviously I'm a faith-based man, and I believe in God, and I believe He inspired the Constitution, which and I'm very grateful for the founders that they put the 10th Amendment in there, because that wasn't originally part of the Constitution. The 10th Amendment really could save, I shouldn't say could, I believe the 10th Amendment will save the United States. The states will be the ones that put the federal government back in its position. So Mark is, a lot of people really know this. I don't think it's anything new. He is tied to the environmentalists, the radical environmental movement. He has been part of that his entire life. And you even confront him and he doesn't like to admit it when he's around a bunch of conservatives, but the truth is he is an environmentalist. He does not want to see fossil fuels. And I'm just on the opposite side of that. I grew up over by Jackson, not too far from Yellowstone National Park. I'm a traditional Wyomingite. I'm a cowboy. I grew up in the mountains. I grew up with multiple use on my mind, grazing on the deserts and in the mountains, wildlife issues I feel very comfortable with. Veterinarian, I've worked with agriculture, ranchers and farmers all over the state. I feel like I'm prepared to defend the multiple use issues, so that Wyoming could hold strong to what made Wyoming great in the first place. And that's really the big difference in this race, I think, between the current governor and myself, is who will win out? Whose idea will win out? Will we become a billionaire's playground with just like a big nature preserve? Or will we continue with what made us great? Fossil fuels, grazing, all those other issues. Even a timber industry could come back. Instead of our forests burning to the ground because they're overgrown and not managed, we could have a timber industry. there's just so many possibilities that we haven't had because the federal government controls us and policymakers from DC are putting their thumb on us, and they always had. And I think that I think it's time. I think history is here, and it would be an exciting thing to see the state actually become sovereign, like it was promised. They promised us we would be sovereign, but how can you be sovereign when half of your land is not under your control? That's the whole issue here. So I appreciate all the people taking a look at me and my website. It's rammelforwyoming.com. I think it's quite detailed. I'm not one of those guys that just puts generic issues out there. I actually go into detail on my website about tax issues, Second Amendment issues, land issues, the whole 9 yards. I'm on full disclosure. People will know exactly what they're going to get if they vote for Rex Rammel. And all they have to do is go to my website if they have more questions.
Well, Rex, appreciate your time. Rex Rammel, governor candidate from Rock Springs.
Thank you for the interview.
Thank you.